Hello and welcome to the AfterBurners podcast. I'm your host, Samuel Oni, and this is episode 24. With me online is Wes Spearman. Wes, how are you today?
Yeah, pretty good. Well, I didn't really pay much attention to the race yesterday, the Italian Grand Prix, because I was busy commentating on cricket. Um,
Your
yeah,
your
luckily enough,
your
had
your voice, it sounds so sore.
I know I did 100 overs of ball by ball commentary all by myself. So yeah, apologies if I don't sound as fresh, I suppose. But yeah, it was a good day and a good race, which I somehow missed out on. But luckily, I had enough time to watch it back. Yeah, how are you?
Yeah,
Happy birthday
thank
today,
you.
23.
23 years old. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, we've got a lot to get through. Um, we've got a bit of Zandvoort from last week, 2 weeks ago. Wow. And then
A
the
while ago,
Italian
yeah.
Grand Prix that has just gone. And then we'll touch a little bit on Sochi coming up. Excuse me. So, first of all, the Dutch Grand Prix. Coming into the race, it was only about one man, the Flying Dutchman, as I've said over the episodes, Max Verstappen. Well, it's pretty simple anyway. He saw it, he raced it, he conquered it. Um, yeah, how are you?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. So,
Well,
what?
exactly that.
Yeah,
It was just dominant from Max, wasn't it? I mean, got pole, I think led every lap as well, from what I remember. Maybe dropped one or two in the pit stop phases. But yeah, just dominant from Verstappen and Red Bull. Um,
the crowd.
yeah, the crowd was just amazing. I mean, you don't even get that when, say, Hamilton wins at Silverstone. It's not at that level
No,
that it was at
no.
Zandvoort. It was just, you can see the orange flares going off everywhere. Everyone was wearing. You don't go to Silverstone and see people wearing like red, white, and blue for the British flag,
Yeah,
or just Britain itself. You see, it was just a wave, a sea of orange, as we've mentioned a few times this year when
yeah,
we've gone to Spa, we've gone to Austria. Orange being the flag, not the flag, the color of the Netherlands rather. And yeah, it was just amazing scenes. If anything, the crowd was better than the actual race,
yeah.
because the
I
race
agree
wasn't
with
actually that
you.
interesting, really, because it was just Max being dominant, start to finish, as I say. Led Lewis by about 30 seconds in the end when um, he, he pitted to try and get the fastest lap back from Bottas on the
Yeah,
final lap of the race, because Bottas, well, I mean, fair play to him, because he did slow down
yeah.
in the final sector
He
when he
tried
got that
not
message
to.
from
He tried
James.
not to get the fastest lap,
Yeah,
but it's just
he tried not to, but it was just so quick in the first two sectors. I don't think anyone beat them for the whole of the weekend. Um, and yeah, luckily for Lewis, then he did manage to get back that extra bonus point, takes up 19 points for the race. And who knows, it could come down to 1 or 2 points in the end. That's why these drivers are going for these sort of fastest lap points. Is why we saw at Silverstone, Red Bull told Perez to go for the fastest lap. Whilst he wouldn't get the point, he'd then take that point away from Hamilton.
yeah.
And I mean, we're seeing now that the championship still 3 points separating both Verstappen and Hamilton, obviously after Monza. But yeah, the crowd was just amazing at Zandvoort, and
Yeah,
hopefully we'll get to see that more and more as I'm sure F1 continues to race at Zandvoort for as long as Max races in F1 probably.
yeah, yeah. I definitely agree with you. I enjoyed watching the race highlights. It was great. Max Verstappen conquered. I still think he's going to win the championship this year, and I'm going to stand by that. Um, the crowd was excellent. And lastly, what do I think of the track after 35 years, 36 years actually? Yeah, it's all right. I didn't really study into it much, but it looks all right. Great place for racing. But yeah, let me get your thoughts.
Yeah, the track itself. I mean, it's kind of refreshing to just have a track that we haven't seen, as you say, for such a long time, 36 years. Um, and I think the banking just had something a little bit different, because we saw, was it turn 2 or 3, the sort of bank left-hander. You saw drivers taking sort of the high line, sort of the outside line, which if that corner was flat, then that would not be the that wouldn't be the racing line at all. Sort
No.
of start off wide, then cut into the apex. But these drivers using the banking to their advantage because you can take a higher speed on the banking as well. So taking that high line, going on the essentially the wrong line for what would be a flat corner, but because it's banked, you can go faster through it than if you take the low line, which
Yeah.
is obviously a bit flatter, so you can't carry as much speed, but it is a bit shorter. I think on the outside of that corner, there was a slight bump as well as you come down from the banking and then it goes flat again. I think Alonso was caught out by that once or twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, whether it makes for good racing, I'm not too sure. I mean, it's small sample size, of course, only one race. I'll be interested to see what happens over the next few years, providing they continue to race at Zandvoort, obviously, because when we saw with France and Paul Ricard in 2020, it was just a snooze fest, really. But then this year, it provided something a bit good, a bit of strategy. It was a good race in France this year. So hopefully we'll see something like that happen to Zandvoort. Yeah, I just think it's just good to see another track, a classic track, if you like, somewhere where F1 hasn't raced for, as you say, 36 years. Come back to the calendar. Let's be honest. The only reason it's on the calendar is because of Max.
Yeah.
I don't think,
Clearly. Definitely.
any other F1 driver would be sort of pushing for a Dutch Grand Prix.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's good to see. And yeah, I'd like to see how the races progress, whether it'll just be sort of the similar thing to what we've seen a couple weekends ago, whether it's just going to be one driver dominant, hard to overtake, because the track is a little bit narrow. I think compared to somewhere like, say, Monza, for example, the pit lane is also quite narrow. All the pit boxes are quite sort of squashed together. I think at one point when Lewis went into pit, he ran over one of the Red Bull sort of cables, wires, whatever. He's not that had any effect, of course. Yeah, I think it's just something different, really,
Yeah.
and I hope hopefully it can provide better racing as the years go on.
Yeah, I agree with you. And lastly, before we move on, I have a question for you. So as you said, Zandvoort came back after 36 years. 1985, I believe, was the last race. So my question is to you: who was the last person, driver, to win the Dutch Grand Prix in Zandvoort?
I wasn't expecting that.
No.
I think it was one of Senna or Prost. From what I remember from seeing pictures around on social, I'm going to go Prost. I'm not 100% sure though.
It's not Alain Prost. No.
Is it Senna?
No, it's not Senna.
No? Oh, is it not? Oh, I must have been looking at the wrong pictures then. 85.
This driver, has passed away. He has won, I think, 3 Formula One.
Niki Lauda.
Yes.
Niki
Lauda.
Yeah.
Niki Lauda. He was the last man to win it. Dutch Grand Prix.
Great man. Great driver.
Yeah, he was.
Great
He was a great driver. Now, moving on. Earlier in the week, F1 released some fantastic news of the driver markets, confirming who's going to go where. And, we had some contract renewals. We had some drivers who have come back into F1 after a couple years away. And we had some exciting moves about the current grid. But the big news was a certain George Russell. George Russell has been
not Bottas going to Alfa Romeo. I thought that was a big news of the week.
Yeah. Oh, all right. We'll start with Valtteri Bottas before getting to George Russell. Valtteri Bottas, as confirmed, will be driving for Alfa Romeo in 2022. Tell me, what kind of driver will Alfa Romeo be getting, and what do you think of the move?
I think it's a good move for Bottas personally, because I think it was just a little bit of not necessarily a toxic environment at Mercedes, but they made it very clear that he was number 2 to Hamilton, and yes, he got 9 wins with Mercedes, which isn't bad, but if they were on level pegging, and if, say, he didn't have Lewis as his teammate, then he could have got that into double figures quite easily, I'm sure. He's a top quality driver. Bottas. He hasn't shown much of it this year. He has made a few mistakes. I think most notably at France when his defensive driving was just all over the place, really. Putting a fresh sort of start, if you like, with a team that has struggled a bit this year. I think they'll welcome the likes of Bottas and all the experience he's had at five years at Mercedes. That's a long time
Yeah.
to race for one of the top teams in Formula One and the most dominant team F1 has ever seen. So for him to go and take that knowledge and that experience that he's gained from Mercedes, take that into Alfa Romeo Sauber, and hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll see them climb up a couple places in the constructors next year. They're currently sitting in ninth behind Williams. Mainly thanks, of course, to the Spa, if you can call it a race.
It's not a race.
Yeah, I think Bottas will enjoy it at Alfa Romeo. He probably should get number one driver if they are going to go down those lines, because he's a bit more experienced and probably better quality driver than someone like Giovinazzi. Although Giovinazzi has put in some stellar performances the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Bottas will enjoy it. I think he'll be a good driver, a solid midfield driver, battling out for points, hopefully most weeks. Yeah, I just think it'll be a fresh start from him. I look forward to seeing him in the red and white of Alfa Romeo.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel, Bottas was if I was to describe Bottas in a few words, I see him as someone who he wasn't given almost wasn't given enough limelight in the driving, because, as you said, all the spotlight was on Hamilton, because Hamilton has a history of Formula One, winning championship after championship, race after race, and then you have a second driver who's merely just backup to the first driver. So I just feel that Bottas, he had a few wins, 9 wins. And yeah, he's been a good driver for Mercedes for the last 5 years. I remember, I think he won in Sochi. He won in Sochi in 2019, or was it 2018? What, for Mercedes?
His first win came at Sochi in 2017, I think.
2017. Wow.
I remember that because I was on a cricket coaching course, and I remember in the pavilion they had Sky Sports on it. Oh, Bottas won the race. Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's won a few times at Sochi, actually, about 3 times, I think, at least.
Yeah.
And obviously they're racing at Sochi next weekend as well.
Exactly.
Not next weekend, in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, he didn't get a lot of spotlight at Mercedes, and I think this move for Alfa Romeo will not only be good for like the team in like the experience he's picked up, but I think for Bottas personally, it gives him the opportunity to drive more freely, to drive without having team orders behind his back, because there have been a couple of occasions where team orders from Mercedes, Bottas hasn't always followed them, to put it nicely. I think there was one, I think I'm not sure, but I think just merely team orders, do this, and then Bottas doesn't do it. So yeah, the kind of driver Alfa Romeo will be getting, again, experience, try and take the team, up the positions in the constructors championship. And yeah, I think it's a really good move for him. So yeah, all the best to him in Alfa Romeo. And we still don't know who his partner will be.
No, I have a feeling it'll be Giovinazzi, but yeah, it's still unconfirmed. I think they're keen on Theo Pourchaire from F2, not necessarily for next year, but for 2023. So we'll see, say, Giovinazzi. I think Giovinazzi will keep his seat this year. I don't think they'll move someone like Mick Schumacher up from Haas, or bring in someone like Callum Ilott. I think it will be Giovinazzi to partner in for 2022.
Yeah, yeah. Another piece of F1 news was, staying with Alfa Romeo, was Kimi Räikkönen. He confirmed his retirement. We will not be seeing Kimi Räikkönen after this season, the Iceman again. Let me get your thoughts. What do you think of it? The right call?
Yeah, sad news, but I think it was the right call in the end because he's into his 40s now, well into his 40s now, Raikkonen. And I think he just said in an interview a few years ago that F1's like a hobby to him. If he doesn't want to keep doing it, then he'll stop doing it. And I think maybe that's what's happened this year. Maybe he feels the time is right to step aside, let someone else take the reins at Alfa Romeo. But he's just a legend of F1, winning the World Championship, of course, in 2007 with Ferrari. Came back to Ferrari in, was it 2014, 2015? Can't quite remember now. 2015, I think. Had a few decent years there. Won, I think it was at the US Grand Prix in 2018, I believe. I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. And then has done okay at Sauber. Not done the greatest this year. I think he's been out qualified a few times by Giovinazzi. But yeah, a great servant to F1. Been racing in the sport for over 20 years. I mean, if you have a career that's over 20 years, no matter what sport it is, then you've done pretty well.
Yeah.
And I don't have Raikkonen's stats, but I think he's got the most race starts of anyone, I think, beating Rubens Barrichello. Yeah, a great servant to F1, a great driver, absolutely brilliant bloke. I mean, we know how funny he can be at times, especially when it comes to the media, because I mean, he doesn't like doing the media at all. And I
No.
don't blame him. I don't blame him for
Yeah.
that whatsoever, because having the same questions asked week in, week out for 20 years, it will take a toll. It will become just a bit tedious time and time again. So, and that's probably the reason why he's decided to quit.
Yeah.
To be honest, all the media hustle around F1 nowadays. But yeah, great driver, great bloke, and yeah, sad to see him go.
Yeah. I pretty much what you said, really. Great driver. He was a world champion 2007. And yeah, he'll be missed. I think one moment that I liked about him was in Monaco. I don't know what year it was. He was eating an ice cream
I
on the
remember that. Yeah.
preparing for a race. So that was quite a funny moment. Yeah, he's not really one for the media, short answers. And then
Yeah,
yeah,
sort of an interviewer's nightmare, really, because the
yeah.
worst thing you want as an interviewer is like a one or two word answers. There was another one I remember. I think it was in Malaysia when he was racing for Lotus, and I can't repeat what he said on air because there is a swear word in it, or maybe we can bleep it out. I think it was Martin Brundle interviewing him sort of before as the cars were on the grid, sort of asking him where he went, and just paraphrase slightly, he said, "No, I was having a poo." Just like, okay, cool, fair enough. Thanks for the input, Kimmy. Of course, the typical bois at the start of every answer, just go bois. Just personifies Kimmy, just like, what can I say here? Yeah, it's just brilliant, and yeah, he'll be missed in the paddock for sure.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, Kimi Raikkonen retiring at the end of the season. After Abu Dhabi, there will be no more Kimi Raikkonen. Just one Finn driver on the grid from next year. So yeah. So other other news included Sergio Perez renewing his contract with Red Bull. Again, great driver. He's been done pretty well this season. A podium in Azerbaijan. Yeah, yes,
Yeah,
Azerbaijan.
winning Azerbaijan.
You corrected me there. Winning Azerbaijan. Winning Azerbaijan. But yeah, decent reward for his great work. But that's that. But the big news of Formula One during the past week or so was all about George Russell. Not only did he have that stunning qualifying in Belgium that got him on the front row with Max Verstappen, which I think was absolutely outstanding. But the big news is that George Russell has confirmed will be driving for Mercedes in 2022. Twitter went crazy. F1 went crazy.
Everyone went crazy.
Everyone went crazy. So it's finally happened. Toto signed him up.
No, we have inner peace now that it was such a poorly kept secret as well, because I sent you a WhatsApp of, I can't remember who was interviewing Russell, might have been Will Buxton. So, and he was like, so when are you going to get your first win? And then Russell just had a think and said, next year. So just like, hang on a second, hang on. What's that supposed to mean? You're not going to win in a Williams, surely. I think elsewhere in that interview as well, I think Christian Horner came along and just sort of jokingly asked, "Oh, what are you asking me about? His new deal for next year?" And sort of patting Russell on the back. And then Russell just like, "No, I don't know what you're on about, Christian. What are you on about?" And I'm just like, "Oh no!" And then as soon as Bottas was confirmed to Alfa Romeo, everyone knew that it had to be Russell in that Mercedes car for next year. Obviously, Lewis has congratulated him on the move. Latifi said, "Oh, yeah, well done on the move. Sad to see you go," sort of thing. But I just hope he won't fall into the same, not necessarily trap as Bottas, but that sort of same position that Bottas was in as number 2 driver.
Yeah.
Hopefully they can and will be allowed to race like Hamilton and Rosberg did back in the days. Say back in the days, only about 5 years ago. But yeah,
I did speak on that issue of as you said, Russell hoping that Russell is given some sort of priority to just win races. Go on, continue. I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd just love to see him and Hamilton just going wheel to wheel, rather than you have that usual message like, George, it's James, hold back, and sort of thing. Yeah, hopefully we can see Russell get his first win. He was robbed of it in 2020 as the Mercedes pit stop cock-ups and punches and what have you.
If that didn't happen,
massively.
What if that didn't happen?
I know. What if? I know. Luckily he got his first points that weekend as well. Because even if he didn't, he would have got his first points in Hungary. It would have been this year, and obviously that P2 in Spa. But yeah, I'm massively looking forward to see what Russell will do. He's an immensely talented driver, as we've seen this year, last year, with Williams. And yeah, 2 Brits driving for a German team. I don't think you'd see that too often. Yeah, just give me 2020. Give me 2022 now. Actually, don't, because this seems to be as one of the most entertaining F1 seasons we've seen for quite some while. Because Hamilton dominance and Vettel dominance, and hook it into my veins. Russell 2022. Let's go.
Yeah. And hopefully we can see Russell on the top step of the podium.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. A lot of Mercedes 1-2s. So Hamilton and Russell will be switching 1-2 race after race. So either way, it's a Mercedes win. Right. The season so far, well, we've had race wins, race losses, and then we've had crashes. Right. Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton, 2 championship protagonists racing for the title. They've already crashed in Silverstone at Cops Corner. Don't mention Cops Corner. Bring on, fast forward to September 12th, Monza. Wes, take it away.
Wow. I don't know where to start, actually. We'll say the crash review, because that happened quite some way into the race. But obviously Bottas got pole in sprint qualifying, or even qualifying before that, led from start to finish in the sprint race.
I still don't know where I stand on sprint qualifying.
No,
I'm sorry.
I don't know either. Apparently, couldn't watch the sprint race because again I was working. But from what I've seen on social media stuff, I heard it was quite dull, quite boring, and whether it's actually adding anything. I mean, the fans do get another race instead of a practice session essentially, but is it adding anything to F1? Is it making something? We got a bit of a mixed up grid, I suppose, so that's some positive from it. But was it more interesting than a free practice session? Is the debate? Is it useful in Formula One? But I mean, the mixed up grid we did get, Ricardo was on P2, or started P2 after obviously Bottas took the engine penalty and to start from the back. So Verstappen was on pole, and then was it Norris P3? I can't quite remember now, or was it Perez? I genuinely can't remember. I
Norris,
haven't had the time to pay attention. Really.
Norris started P3, Perez, and then I don't know who was fifth, but I think Hamilton was in the top 6. I'm sure of that. Yeah, Hamilton was in top 6. But yeah, lights went out, and then wow, just seeing McLaren's in the top
the pace,
3, and Ricardo's there. Wow, you never would have guessed it, would you?
No, not really. I mean, they just had incredible pace all weekend. I know they got the Mercedes engines in the car this year compared to previous years at Renault and then Honda. But I don't think many people would have expected McLaren to do that well at Monza. Given, I mean, if Bottas didn't have the engine penalty, then I think he could have quite easily gone on to win the race. If he did start on pole. Obviously, the crash had a big impact on the race because it took out 2 potential race winners, and it was just all McLaren from there really. Bit of Charles Leclerc getting involved as well. Danny Ricciardo taking the lead from essentially the first corner is just ridiculous. His first win since Monaco 2018, McLaren's first win since 2012 when Button won that time round. I think their first 1-2 since 2010.
Wow.
I think when it was Button and Hamilton.
10 years.
Record smashed for McLaren, and 2 brilliant drivers as well, Ricciardo and Norris to get the win and the second place. McLaren third in the constructors now, as well, ahead of Ferrari. I'm not sure if they were third coming into the weekend, but sort of solidified that third place.
Yeah.
For now, anyway. And yeah, I suppose we do have to get into the crash at some point.
Yeah.
I suppose it all started off with Verstappen's slow pit stop. It was 11 seconds.
Yeah.
I think it was, because they had a problem with, I think it was the front right tire. It couldn't quite.
Like you said,
wasn't working.
Yeah, like you said, I think that set the tone to what would happen next. Very unlike Red Bull to go more than 2 seconds in a pit stop. Normally you'd see them.
I mean,
2 seconds and then they're out.
Yeah. So for them to go 11 seconds is a horror show. Well, for any F1 team, not just Red Bull, when it comes to a pit stop, because even if you have a slow stop, you don't expect them to be more than 3 seconds, if that, really.
Yeah.
Verstappen, as I say, very slow pit stop, 11 seconds. Then put in a decent outlap, to be fair. But again, Mercedes also had a slow pit stop with Hamilton, not as slow as Red Bull's. I think it was 4.2 seconds.
Yeah, 4.2.
Hamilton's pit stop sort of gave Verstappen, obviously more time to try and complete the outlap on fresh tyres. And we saw, I can't remember who, whether it was Ricciardo or Norris, going round the first corner just as Verstappen was catching up to Hamilton on the start-finish line.
I think it was Norris. I didn't quite see.
Yeah, I think it was Norris. As well, yeah. And then obviously I had the 2 relatively side by side coming into that the first chicane.
So at that point, when they're side by side, Norris has already gone.
Yeah.
At that point, space on the track. Did Hamilton have enough space, or was he like, or was his position so tight that, he had nowhere else to go, and it's Verstappen who had to probably ease off a bit to just let Hamilton pass?
Well, I think people will be debating that for the rest of the season. Really, same as what happened in Silverstone. Was it a racing incident? Was it Verstappen's fault? Was it Hamilton's fault? People are going to have their own opinions as to who they support. Really, I think I read something early this morning from Will Buxton on Twitter, obviously F1 journalist, works with F1 as well, basically taking us through the whole thing sort of step by step as to what was going on, who had sort of right of way, if you like, who had the right to go on the racing line, who should have given space, stuff like that. And I think he was basically calling it pretty much 50-50 racing incident between Verstappen and Hamilton. And I think actually, I think he was actually erring slightly 60-40 against Hamilton, so saying it was perhaps 10% more Hamilton's fault than Verstappen's. My view on it, it was very, very close between the two of them, because obviously Hamilton just come out of the pits, whereas Verstappen was sort of racing, if you like.
Yeah.
But going into that first corner, the right hander of the chicane, I think Hamilton did have the lead. So surely he has right to the racing line, which is obviously the inside for that right hander. Verstappen, to his credit, did well. Pretty much, it was a slight lunge, I think, from Verstappen, but kept it around the outside, kept it clean. And then I think the second corner, the left-hander in that chicane, is where things get sort of debatable as to whose fault it was, because you had Hamilton essentially keeping the racing line. There will be debates about whether he was entitled to that or not, given the cars were, again, fairly side by side. But I'm just trying to keep this as politically correct as possible,
I understand.
not towards one or the other. But yeah, Hamilton kept the racing line. Verstappen wanted to go down the inside, make that aggressive move, and it would have been quite an aggressive move because he came from a long way back on that pit straight. And then hit the sausage curves, bounced up and essentially onto Hamilton's car. One of the tires was very close to his head, so thank God the halo was there. Otherwise, we could have said goodbye to one of the greatest F1 drivers of all time. And again, I've said it time and time and again, but safety in F1 has come on leaps and bounds even in the last 5 years, last decade. So full praise to the halo for doing its job yet again. And it just shows how silly all the criticisms were of it a few years ago. Oh, it doesn't look good. The drivers won't be able to see because the middle sort of pillar, if you like. And at the end of the day, over the last 2 years, it saves 2 drivers' lives.
Yeah.
In the form of Grosjean, obviously, at Bahrain, and then Hamilton this time around in Monza. But personally, I think it was more erring towards the racing incident sort of thing. I don't think you can pin the blame on one of the 2 drivers. You can say, oh, Verstappen should have backed out, whether he was entitled to go down the inside. Some people will say that. Some people will say Hamilton should have given Verstappen some space because Verstappen was sufficiently alongside. I don't think I'm in a position to I'm not one of the stewards here to say whose fault it was, whether Max was sufficiently alongside. I think for the first corner he was, but I'm not sure for the second corner.
Yeah.
So I think it was an aggressive move by Max, and if it had stuck, then we'd all be saying, "Oh, what an outstanding move by Verstappen! So what an aggressive driver! How much he wants the race win, wants the championship." But I mean, both drivers want it equally as bad. So I think at the end of the day, racing incident, I don't think you can pin the blame on either driver. You can say drivers could have done things differently, and there was still plenty of time to go in the race. So did Max need to make that move? Was he worried that perhaps, given Monza is quite a power dominated circuit, which sort of leans things slightly in favor of Mercedes,
Yeah.
Was he worried that if he did let Hamilton go, then he wouldn't be able to catch up later on in the race? But there was still about 30 laps in the race, from what I remember. There was still
Mhm.
such a long time left to go. But yeah, for me, racing incident, and I'll end it there before before people come wanting for my head.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. I agree with you. I'm not so much of a technical person as to, like who's at fault, but the way I saw it, I just think that, you know, um, I mean the way I saw it, I mean I just saw it and just the aftermath, really, just like the front right of the wheel clipping, taking off Hamilton's rear wing, and again as seen landing on top of his head. You know, thank God for the halo, and yeah, the halo is there for safety of the drivers, and I think not I can't quite remember his name, Jean Tost, I think.
Jean Jean Todt.
Yeah, Jean Todt, that's it.
Yeah,
F1, I think F1 chairman or very high position. He said on
something like that. Yeah,
social media that thank God for the halo there, and hopefully both drivers are all right. Hopefully Hamilton's all right, recovering well, and yeah, after that, both drivers were taken out of the race completely. Verstappen would later be hit with a three-place grid penalty for the next race in Russia. So, you know, three-place grid penalty, never nice. And yeah, after that, it was just McLaren all the
Aaron.
way,
Yeah.
all the way. Um, yeah. How impressed are you with McLaren this season overall? Yeah, I'll give you
I think
that.
they've done just superbly. I think after I suppose a decent last couple of years with Renault, obviously coming off the horror show, I suppose with Honda engines. I mean, Alonso had a lot to say about that. Um, yeah, this year with Mercedes, they've started to find their feet again as one of the top teams in the midfield, pushing for those podium places in some and on some tracks, like Monaco, for example, where Norris got a podium. Austria last year, Norris got a podium. And then obviously this time around in Monza, a 1-2. Again, I
Yeah.
say it again, no one would have expected that. Apologies if you can hear the siren outside, by the way. But yeah, they've just done so well, and hopefully we'll see more of this from McLaren. They've got two top quality drivers in Daniel Ricciardo and Lando Norris. Again, I just want to see them get more podiums this year. Maybe another race win if we do have another crazy race like
Yeah.
Monza or like Hungary or like Spa. But yeah, they're just beyond expectations, I think,
Mm-hmm.
this year. And I think Daniel Ricciardo now gets to drive a NASCAR. I think that was his deal with Zach Brown. I think obviously he had that deal with Cyril Abiteboul, where if he got a podium for Renault, then Abiteboul would get a tattoo of
Oh
something
yeah,
of a
I
honey
think
badger or whatever it was.
I think that was on Drive to Survive. Was that on Drive
I
to
think so,
Survive?
yeah.
Yeah,
I think
because I
so.
heard something about
Um,
that.
and then I think Zach Brown sort of said to Ricardo, if you want to race, then he get to drive, I think, Dale Earnhardt's NASCAR. Dale Earnhardt being one of a legend of NASCAR, from what I remember. But yeah, I wonder what Norris gets if he were
Hmm,
to win a
yeah.
race. I don't know. I don't know if they've made a deal as to Norris. You can have this if you get a race win, or when you get a race win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so great to see McLaren back on the top step of the podium. The first time in 9 years
Yeah.
they've won a race. First time in 11 years they've had a 1-2.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully these two drivers can just keep sort of improving, keep helping to not necessarily. I don't think it's a part of rebuilding McLaren anymore. They've already
Mm,
rebuilt. They're just looking to push on, become one of those top three teams again, fight with the likes of Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull, like it was 10 years ago.
yeah.
And yeah, hopefully we'll see more and more of that as the years go by.
Yeah, and I agree with you. Just to almost round it up, come to an end. This week, well, in the next couple of weeks, we're off to Sochi for the Russian Grand Prix. Very cold country. So I don't know.
Not in Sochi. It's a beach resort, I think.
Oh, is it?
Actually, I don't know because I don't know. I think it's on the Black Sea.
Oh,
Then again, the Winter Olympics were held there in 2014, so
yeah,
I'm not quite sure. But yeah, we'll get on to Sochi next week because we won't have anything else to talk about otherwise.
yeah, yeah. And just to finish off, just another thing. Alex Albon confirmed for Williams. How good is it to see Alex Albon back?
Yeah, good to see him back. I think he was jettisoned too early from Red Bull. I don't think he could have won really at Red Bull because obviously what happened to Gasly had a poor start to the season with Red Bull. So they moved Albon up in his first season in F1. And I don't think that really did him any good.
Yeah,
And obviously got rid of after his second year. I think he is a decent driver. I don't think he's had enough chances to show that yet in F1. So hopefully with Williams, it'll obviously be at the back of the grid most weeks. Hopefully, if he can put on similar performances like we've seen George Russell do,
yeah,
for example, if he can consistently out qualify the likes of Latifi, the Haas's, Alfa Romeo every now and then maybe Red Bull will take him back in not necessarily next year or the year after. I don't know what I said next year. He's ready for Williams next year. Yeah, maybe in a few years down the line when Perez retires, for example,
yeah,
maybe Gasly will get the seats at Red Bull, and maybe he can reclaim his place in the Red Bull Drivers Academy sort of setup, if you like, and race with Toro Rosso and not Toro Rosso, Alpha Tauri.
yeah.
Sorry, back in it, Toro Rosso. Yeah, it's great to see him back in F1, and yeah, I think he deserves another shot.
Yeah, agreed. And that almost does bring us to the end. Well, Italian Grand Prix come and gone. We've had crashes, Max Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton colliding together, taking each other out. And we've had McLaren on the podium, a 1-2 for the first time since when? 2012? Yeah,
2012, yeah.
2012. And next week or week after, I think a couple of weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, we got a week break and then back at Sochi. Let's have a look at the dates. It'll be the 26th, I think.
26th of September. Okay, yeah. So we've come to the end of another episode of the AfterBurners podcast. I've been your host, Samuel Oni, and it's a goodbye from me. Bye-bye. And it's a goodbye from Wes.
Goodbye. Happy 23rd birthday.
Thank you, my man. Thank you. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks in Sochi for the Russian Grand Prix.